Once upon a time, there were two friends who never met each other in person, but they said, "Hey, let's start a podcast about our writing," in which we never really write. But this will be another fun distraction, and we can meet and talk every single week. And that's what we did. So in September of 2019, we started working on this podcast, and on March 25th, 2020, we released the trailer episode. And then April 1st, 2020, we released episode 1 of the Merry Writer podcast. So hello everyone, I'm Rachel here with Ari, and we're your hosts for the Merry Writer podcast, and we are celebrating our 5th anniversary of this show. And we're on episode 262, which is kind of crazy. And we're asking, what new things have we learned running a podcast? Now we're saying new things because we did already do this episode once before. I don't remember when. I don't remember what episode it was. I meant to look it up before we started recording, and I did not. But I'll put a link in the description below if you want to go listen to it. And the reason we chose this topic was thanks to you guys voting on a poll we published on our coffee page, our websites, and our social media. So thank you to everyone who voted. We actually had a lot of thoughts for this topic, so this is going to be a long one, and also a bonus episode will follow on our coffee page. And there's also going to be a second bonus. So the first bonus is going to be free to everyone. It'll go along with this episode. And then we have another bonus idea where we'll revisit questions that we used to ask when the podcast was a Twitter hashtag game. So please look forward to that. That'll be for our coffee supporters only. Hey, but speaking of coffee, you should check it out. Check out the page. You can follow the page for free, as we have like so many goodies for everybody. Available for everybody, I should say. But of course, if you're feeling generous, then you can give us a one-off donation or become a Merry Writer for $2 a month, and those will get you access to even more treats that we already have. You'll have access to all the items in our shop, including exclusive stuff and access to monthly bonuses, and it just helps support the podcast in general, because it's been 5 years and we wouldn't still be here without your support. So real quick shout out to all of the guests who have been on the show before, especially the guests who have been on here multiple times. The fact that they've wanted to revisit is wild. And I'm not going to name all of you. We've had over 50 guests. So I'm not going to name all of you because I will forget somebody, but you know who you are. And I also wanted to give a quick shout out to the people who do support us on Coffee. Chris, Jeremy, and Jackie. Thank you so much for being a Merry Writer. And also a shout out to my sister, Kristen, who is paying for our Zoom plan, who has been paying for our Zoom plan for the past 5 years. And also shout outs to Ari for having this idea in the first place and making us do this every single week for the past 5 years.
Making us? Making
Yes.
us. I'm
Yes.
making us do this. I'm
Yes.
forcing you to come on and talk to me? Rude.
Yes. No, we love it though. Otherwise, I think we wouldn't be doing this for 5 freaking years if we didn't enjoy it. And so that actually is gonna, I've probably talked about, I've talked enough. So, well, I'm actually gonna keep talking, but I'll actually talk about what we've learned running a podcast these past 5 years. And the first one is that, man, running a podcast is like a part-time job. It's kind of crazy. And if Ari and I didn't have each other, it would be a full-time job. I don't think either one of us realized the time commitment to running a podcast. And I mean, to be fair, I don't think either one of us imagined we would still be running this podcast 5 years later. But here we are. And the thing is, it's a part-time job, even if you don't make money from it. Because it is really difficult to make your podcast grow to the point that you can monetize it. And podcasting is expensive. So it's kind of a money sucker too, because you got to pay for hosting, you got to pay for Zoom, you got to pay for websites, social media, like, the marketing, all of that stuff. We pay for Canva. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to think of stuff that we use. The equipment, we'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the great things about being able to run a podcast for 5 years is that we've been able to be consistent because we work so well together and we split everything 50-50. And I mean, to be honest, we could probably do a little more to advertise the podcast, but honestly, we barely do any real promoing, but we get new listeners and lots of downloads over on Podbean, and it comes from being consistent. People know when we're posting. We actually have never missed a single episode in these 5 years, which I think deserves a round of applause and a pat on the back for both of us. And we always get big spikes in downloads on the days we upload. It also helps having the two hosts, as we've mentioned this before. That way, if one is ill, the other can still push on and there aren't any gaps in like the posting. But also, it's not just us. It's not like we're working on this podcast 24/7 because scheduling is our friend. To go along with the consistency, scheduling and staying ahead is a big time saver. It's a lot up front, especially if you're like us and you want to take a few months off, which we do at the end and start of the year. We actually only actively work on the podcast for 6 months. Surprise, surprise. But to do this, we work our butts off those other 6 months and we plan on being ahead all the time, recording 2 to 3 episodes in one day and then taking a week or two to edit them and schedule them. And this means if anything happens, like, for example, when one of us has had a death in the family, the other can take over the other's editing or just whatever needs to get done. Because we've had to do this when we've had guests on too. There have been times where we've had to solo interview a guest because something was going on with the other one. But we make it work, and our guests have been very flexible with us, which is always a plus.
It's also been ages since we recorded, because we're just coming off our hiatus, so this feels so weird to be recording again.
It actually is really weird to be recording again, but it's weirdly like riding a bike. We're still gonna screw up and we're still gonna fall and scrape our knee and cry about it, but we're we're getting back into it.
But this leads perfectly in with the whole scheduling thing. It's like because we work so hard in the middle part of the year and we want to take time off at Christmas time, like at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, because nobody wants to do intense things at the very end of the year or at the start of a new year. You're still kind of recovering in my eyes. So the scheduling is what's been happening. So you might be like, oh wow, they've been putting stuff out all the time. It's like, yeah, schedules. That's all it is. We schedule everything. It is so important and it is the best thing you can do. And not just for the podcast either. If you have a blog, if you have social media, schedule everything. If it will make your life so much easier. And it still shocks me how many people don't either know about scheduling or use scheduling. Just going to make a point about that. Okay, so my points, let's go to my next point. Okay, podcasting connects you, and it's something you might not have realized because I know it never really dawned on us. So when we started this podcast way, way, way back 5 years ago, oh my gosh, it was honestly just something fun we wanted to do during the pandemic. I mean, we'd been planning it before the pandemic started, but it was one of those we know we would have just been planning and planning and doing nothing. And then the pandemic started, and it was kind of like, should we just do it? And we did, as Rachel said, threw some stuff out in March, in April, and it was something we could do. We could chat and we could bitch about things every week, which was totally fun. But we didn't realize that it was eventually going to build into a bit of a community and have connections. Probably because we never thought we'd ever get any listeners. I think we had a guest on who talked about the fact, because we mentioned how like we've got 20 listeners, and I remember she said, I think it was Julie Valerie, and she said, just imagine if you were in a room with 20 people and you were talking. And it was so like, oh God, yeah, that's way too many people when you think about it like that. And now we have what? Too many, too many. We have downloads all the time. We have like 100 and odd people on YouTube, which might not sound many to most people who have bigger YouTube channels, but that's a lot for us. We're we're a little tiny podcast. And we now honestly never thought we would get loads of listeners or any listeners. And we do. We actually have a core group of listeners who listen to almost every episode. We have people who leave us comments all the time. We have listeners who have given us great ideas for new episodes. And it has kind of built a little community. And in turn, I think it's given us a lot more confidence and it's helped us reach out to guests. Because I think the first guests we reached out to were people who used to play the original game on Twitter. And then a few people we already knew in the writing community, but since we started building this podcast, it has made it easier for us to reach out to people we have never talked to and we've never met. And both Rachel and I have anxiety. It's very difficult to reach out to people we don't know. But honestly, the community part has helped with that. Now, on on saying that, as supportive and wonderful as a lot of these people are, excellent listeners, excellent guests, absolutely wonderful, negativity comes to everybody. So even though we are a little tiny podcast, even we have had some negativity. We've had the odd comment that's been a bit shitty, and I think we even got a review that was not nice about our voices. And it's like, it happens. You get crappy comments, you get people saying things like that. And I think if we'd have received those very early on, when we had like no real listeners, it might have slowed us down a bit. It might have made us think, oh, should we do this? But I'll be honest, because we've been doing this so long and because we've had some great people support us and guests who've been absolutely incredible, I don't know, it doesn't bother me as much when someone leaves a not nice comment or a not nice review. It's not as, yeah, it doesn't derail us, We're okay. We can just push back and keep going. And to be honest, anything you do online, you're always going to get someone who throws negativity at you, whether you run a website, a YouTube video, whether you're putting something on Instagram, putting something on your website, whether you're putting a book out, anything. Someone is going to leave a bit of a nasty comment or a review, and it's going to hurt a little bit. But honestly, there's more good out there than bad. And I think that's what we found with this podcast.
Everybody has people that don't like them for one reason or another. So the fact that we did have that one negative comment that we know of, that's something else that I've learned with the podcast is that unless you run a podcast yourself, you have no idea how podcasts work on the internet. It's very strange. We don't just upload our episodes to like when we upload to the hosting website on Podbean, it goes on the RSS feed, and the RSS feed feeds it literally to every single podcatcher there is. Most of these places, you can't make an account. You can claim the podcast, but there's no way to engage with your listeners on those platforms. And I think that negative comment came from a platform where we can't, like, anybody could reply to the comments, but like we ourselves, we don't have an account on that website. We're not able to claim the podcast. So there's really, people don't realize that we don't really see that stuff right away, depending on where it is. We pay most attention to Podbean and to YouTube, which is partly why we push Podbean and YouTube so much, because YouTube is the extra thing, but Podbean is the hosting. So we get notifications from that and we get emails from that. If you write a review or a comment on like iTunes or something or Apple Podcasts, whatever it is now, we have to manually go on our podcast page to notice it. And Ari and I don't know, well, actually, I can't speak for Ari, but I always forget to check those other places. But every once in a while, I will check them and I'll be like, wow, we have 16 subscribers on this one platform that I've never heard of in my life. But apparently there are listeners on there. So that's also kind of wild. When it comes to running a podcast, you put it on the hosting. Otherwise, you have very little control over where else it goes and what happens on those platforms.
It is weird because it's like I think there was a few that we could reach out to and say like we have a podcast, we'd like to be added to this, and you actually add yourself. But most of them we'd find out because we'd be on Podbean in the stats, and it tells you where people are listening to, and it'd be like Castbox. And you're like, who's Castbox? And there were so many that we'd never heard of. So then we started doing a search, and we found ourselves on so many places with, as you said, with followers and listeners, and it's like, seriously? We'd never heard of some of these. And I think the top three, I think Podbean's one, Spotify might be another, Apple Podcast, and then I think there's two that I've never heard of, and they're like where we get a lot of a lot of our downloads from. So yeah, it's very weird.
It is weird. I mean, when we did research on how to start and run a podcast way back in the day, we were looking and comparing different hosting websites. We didn't think, I don't think either one of us really knew how an RSS feed worked. We just knew it existed and we needed that through the hosting. And we were like, huzzah, we have a podcast. But I don't know, you learn some things you just gotta learn as you go. But I'm gonna just move on to the next point. And one of the other things that we have learned, which is actually pretty difficult for both of us to learn, is that comfort is key, especially when it comes to our guests. We do a much better job, in my opinion, of making our guests feel comfortable than we do making ourselves feel comfortable. But we still have to make sure that we ourselves are comfortable as well. And of course, we still get moments of nerves when we're about to record. So we know what it feels like, especially for guests who have never been on a podcast before. So in order to host guests and even get them to revisit us, we needed to, kind of make sure that everything that we need from them and everything that they do and their topics and stuff like that makes them as comfortable as possible. So we're always looking for new ways and systems to help do that. And in turn, it makes us more comfortable because if Ari and I are going to be a bundle of nerves and the guest is going to be a bundle of nerves and vice versa, it's just like this vicious circle. But over the years, we have learned different methods. That's the word I've been looking for this entire time I've been rambling. Methods. We've figured out different methods to make ourselves and guests more comfortable while we, record, and just the overall like scheduling process of asking guests to be on the show and stuff like that. If you've ever been a guest on the show like back then and then you revisited our show as a guest again a couple years later, you probably noticed how different it was to be on the show again and to book a session with us and all of that. And yeah, again, you learn as you go pretty much.
Well, I think most of our guests had never been on a podcast. I think we were the first of a lot of people. And I think when we first started, it was quite rough for everybody. And we had to learn because first of all, it was like, well, what would we have wanted if we were a guest? So sometimes we can be a little bit over explaining, like we give everything, like this is what we do, this is how we do it, this is what you need, this is what that helps us, this is what helps you, blah blah blah. But honestly, I think almost all of our guests have been very appreciative of that level of detail, especially anyone who's very nervous, knowing that this is when we start, this is why we have a video, but don't worry, we don't use videos anywhere else. This is why we have a script. This is where you can put your notes, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, and it's so important because you do want some guests back. People have, especially because we did topics before, and a lot of people had extra ideas for topics, and it's like, well, we want to have them back. And the worst thing you could do is make it so uncomfortable for guests that they never want to come on your podcast. And worse, they go and tell everyone else, oh, it's awful. You never want that. So you want to treat your guests as well as possible and make it comfortable so they'll come back. And they'll tell their friends, which has happened a lot. We've had other people who've come to us because like, oh, I heard such a buddy was on your podcast as a guest, and I would like to do that. So it's yeah, if you want guests on your podcast, think about making them as comfortable as possible. Okay, talking of comfort, one of the things that helped us was checklists. Checklists are your friend, seriously. And yeah, we are a little bit crazy about them. Now, I have pockets of my life where I am super organized. And then I have pockets of my life that are beyond dumpster fires. I blame it on being a Pisces, just go with it. But the podcast is probably the most organized part of my life. We touched on this on one of our other episodes. I will try and find that and put that in the description. But again, by we, I mean Rachel, 'cause it's her episode, where we talked about using Trello to stay organized. And honestly, I have so many Trello boards, and they are painful to look at, except the podcast one. Oh, it's perfect. And we have it so organized, and we have checklists for everything. We've got two hosts, so we have to be really clear with each other so we're not overdoing, we're not redoing the same thing over and over again and kind of stepping on each other's toes. So by having checklists for the guests, checklists for the episodes, templates for the episodes, templates for the bonuses, script, all this sort of thing, checklists that tell us have we got the graphics ready? Have we had emails from the guest? Have we got the bio from the guest? Have we got the headshot from the guest? What's the date we're recording? What's the date it's going live? Honestly, there are so many moving parts to a podcast if you're having guests. Hell, even if you're not having guests, there's so many. It is the best thing you can do is to have checklists so you can keep track, whether it's edits, the graphics, the links, anything. Same with spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are another one. We have Google Forms for our guests and our interviews, and they then connect to spreadsheets and it lists everything out. This way, we're not scrambling around looking for bios and email addresses and headshots, which we used to do when we didn't have forms and checklists. Because we also, with our guests, we send emails out inviting them. We send emails out when they've confirmed and we've given them dates. We send emails out reminding them that they're going to be recording with us because we work so far in advance, we sometimes kind of forget to remind guests. So we set up templates for everything like that. It's so important. But yes, checklists. Checklists are great because it's a quick visual. You know, Rachel can tick things off, I can tick things off, and we both see it, and it's so much better. And it's just a way of tracking everything. And I don't know, it's so important because you don't realize how much you will forget. And even 5 years on, you think, oh, you've been doing it for 5 years. Some of it must be like second nature. No, no, it's not. We will still forget things if we don't tick the checklist. It's super important. So, no, do not trust your memory ever, ever with anything, especially if you're running guests on a podcast.
But also, I think if we didn't have checklists, I don't know about you, but for me, if I didn't have a checklist, I just wouldn't do it. It's not even that I would forget. I probably would forget, but even if I remembered it, I'd be like, ah, well, it's not on my to-do list. So I don't have to do it. And I probably just wouldn't do it. And the thing with Trello, Trello is a wonderful tool to use, especially when running a podcast. But I have to say, and I've probably explained this before on the podcast, but if you're new here, here's a fun little fact for you. I tried using Trello long, long time ago. I couldn't be bothered to learn it. I just wanted to automatically know how to use it. And when I didn't know what I was doing with it, I got frustrated and I deleted my account. Wanted nothing to do with it. When Ari approached me about running a podcast and I agreed, she was like, great, I already have ideas and I've already set up a Trello board for it. And she sent me the link. She invited me to the Trello board and I was like, ugh. I was like, I gotta figure out how to learn this now. And I was like, this is gonna suck. But I love Trello when I use it for pretty much everything now. So if you're not on Trello, go look into it if you need to help yourself get a little organized about stuff.
Exactly. It is brilliant, I have to say. I wish every other part of my Trello was brilliant like the podcast one. I need to work on that. But
Oh, me too. All of my Trello boards are a mess except the podcast one.
that's it. Maybe we need like accountability of somebody else connected to the board going, oh, that looks messy. Because I feel like I have to be neater with the Trello board for podcasting because it's not just me and my scatterbrain that's looking at it. It has to be neat because Rachel is also looking at it. And I don't want to get an angry email in the middle of the night going, where the hell is you know, the output? No, what is it? Where the hell is the outro music or something? It's like it has to be organized. So I do need the accountability. That's it.
But we still do that anyway because we accidentally click on cards and move them somewhere else and we don't even realize it.
That is true. That is true. But that's just because we're just terrible, terrible people. But talking of Trello, the next point is systems keep you sane. You need to have systems in place to work for you. And honestly, if you're thinking of starting a podcast, it takes a while because you don't know what's going to go wrong or what's going to be an issue until you're actually in it. So like I mentioned, we have Google Forms to capture guest details. We didn't used to do that. We used to just send an email. I would use my personal email rather than logging into our podcast email because I can be really, really lazy. So then I'd have to send an email and like CC the podcast in, and then they'd respond to the podcast, and then I'd have to go in, and it was like a big mess. And I would always forget to ask for something. So we came up with a Google form. We went through it, both of us, and we figured out what we needed to add on. So we got all the information. We've recently started using Calendly so that guests can book themselves in for their recording slot rather than us sending dozens of emails back and forward trying to tie up our times and dates because Rachel and I are on two different time zones. Adding daylight savings time can mess us up as well. Our guests are often in other time zones as well. So you're literally going back and forward trying to figure out who's got best time when. Whereas with Calendly, we can block out when we are not available, and the calendar will go to the guest in their time zone, and they'll see the dates and the times in their time zone that connect with us. It makes it so much easier. I really wish we'd have figured that out years ago. But of course, it took 5 years for us to figure that out. You know, the same with templates. We have email templates for everything. We've got like 6 or 7 email templates that have the bulk of the information written out, and then we know what we have to add in because you want to streamline it and make it efficient. As Rachel said at the beginning, it is a lot of work. It can feel like a part-time job, and especially if you want to take as much time off as we do, you want it to be quick. So you have to find systems that work. And the problem is you have to go through it and figure out what's annoying you and what is taking a lot of time to create the systems. But checklists, templates, calendars that work, anything like that that can kind of automate it almost, that is a win in my book anyway. So yeah, definitely do that. And I'm just going to lean on to the next one. Learn your software. It was, I think it was last year. Am I right in that, Rachel? Last year when we realized that we could record each audio track individually. Again, 4 years before we figured this out. So on Zoom, if we had a guest as well as us, it could be. I think once we had like was it once or twice we've had 5 people on at the same time, and we didn't know you could record individual tracks. But it made such a difference because for editing, it was so easy to separate the tracks out and cut the things, especially, when we accidentally overtalk each other. It happens. Yeah, 4 years it took us to figure that one out. So if you can learn your software earlier than we did, it can save you so much time. Like we didn't even record up to the cloud, did we? We originally just recorded onto our computers and that and
Yeah, no, we did because on Zoom, if you record to your computer, then both Ari and I can each record separately so that if one of our computers glitch or something like that, we have a backup recording. If we record to the cloud, because I'm the account holder, I'm the only one who can record. So if we lose it, then you know, we're screwed. But whatever. I remember I spent like an entire day researching other recording options that recorded individual audios. And then one day I was trying to update, I think like my privacy settings or something in Zoom because they updated. And I just came across it randomly and I was like, you got to be kidding me all this time. But yeah, so that's how we learned that. That was an accident, but a happy accident.
we have a lot of these accidents that come through. And then we look back thinking, oh, why wasn't that why did that happen 3 years ago? But yeah, so software is so important. And obviously so is equipment. You can record on any old mic, you can record on your computer mic, you can use your computer webcam and things like that. Honestly, maybe that's fine at the beginning, but I think if you are going to be doing it longer term, like we did, which was accidental, it does help to have better equipment. And then we're not talking it has to be hundreds of thousands of pounds or anything, but I think especially your mic needs to be pretty good quality. And obviously making sure you have headphones and things like that. I mean, we record what? We record on Zoom, and then I use Audacity, which is a free program to do my editing. Rachel, you use something else.
I
So,
use Adobe Premiere Pro to edit and
yeah,
stuff.
and that. But yeah, but we've both got pretty decent mics, good headphones, and you do need headphones. Oh my God, have headphones and make sure your guests wear headphones because otherwise you get so much noise that you don't realize gets picked up. But yeah, definitely if you're thinking of doing a podcast, you're thinking of it going longer, just spend that extra money and get good equipment. I know you get some people who have the little like chest mic that attaches. I've never tried those. I have listened to a few podcasts that have used them, and I find that if people move, it sort of scuffles. So personally, I think a standing mic or like on an arm is better, but that is just personal opinion for what I personally think.
I think the mics, the lapel pins, like I think those are the ones, like those are pretty good from what I've seen. It's when people have the mic attached to the wires on their headphones or their earbuds or whatever. That's when, and then they have to hold the wire up to their mouth to speak. And then when they're moving around, you can hear the static and like that's weird. So yeah, you just
Yeah,
gotta be mindful of that stuff. Because not, I mean, the podcast, it's not going to be perfect. I mean, hello, you listen to the My Writer podcast. It's not perfect by any means. We screw up a lot. There's sometimes background noise. We got the dogs barking, we got the cats meowing. But you want to make sure that it is as clean as it can possibly be, pretty much.
Yeah, that is because it's the more noise you have in the background, the more you have to edit. And honestly, editing is awful. It's so awful. But paying somebody else to do it is expensive. So it's just better to do it. So try and make it as easy as possible, unless you have the money to pay someone else to edit.
Editing is so much easier now, though, that we have the separate audio. My gosh. How did we make it this far?
Pure luck. Pure
Yeah,
luck.
sounds about right. Well, I also appreciate that throughout this episode, we're like, we didn't think that we would ever make it this far. So, moral of the story, guys, don't reach for the stars. I mean, with that said, the reason that we have been doing this for 5 years is that despite our, grumpiness sometimes, we actually do enjoy what we do. I mean, it takes a lot of time and energy and money, especially because we've been doing it for years. Um, but we do love it. We really, Ari and I love each other. We love the connections that we've made. And it's just, I don't know, we love writing despite our complaints about it. And this is another great way to just talk about what we love and just catch up with each other and other people in the writing community and even the reading community too. It's just been great. So if you're going to run a podcast, you do have to genuinely enjoy it. And as somebody who started a podcast without ever listening to a single podcast, I did not think I would be here right now. But here we are.
Yeah, I have to admit, I used to listen to the odd one, but I didn't listen to ones like this. I listened to ones where it was like they were telling a story. It was so it's not even I didn't even listen to this sort of podcast where it was like, educational slash, entertainment. It's probably more entertainment than educational.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah, it's kind of crazy just how far things have gone. It's I don't know. I think about us celebrating our fifth anniversary with this show, and I'm like, I feel like we just started this last year, but then I've also feel like we've been working on it for 25 years. You know what I mean?
I think what I enjoyed about doing this is we started out because we had thoughts and ideas we wanted to share and we wanted to rant about it. And a lot of it was quite it was we started with our questions because obviously it's asking all the right questions. That was our tagline. We were using some of the old hashtags from the original game to start the podcast and make it more interesting. But what I found really fun is over the years, we have come up with new ideas or we've had guests on who've said something and we've learned so much more. Like, as we're trying to come up with new episodes, we'll be like, oh, what about this? And then we'll have to go and look into it. And we've learned so much more than we probably would have done if we hadn't done this podcast, you know? And it's been really interesting talking to guests and finding out how they did their process for their writing or how they do their marketing, and it really sticks with you because you're thinking, wow, I would never have known that. Or I might never have considered that that would have been a really good viable option for marketing a story or marketing your book or your website or anything if we hadn't have had these guests on. So it's been eye-opening. It's been fun to share our information and our experiences and our opinions, but it's been really cool learning so much from other people and randomly coming up with an idea and then thinking we have to look into it now.
Well, that's just it. I mean, part of the reason we started this podcast was to give other writers and readers like an educational platform and just share our journeys in general. And, not just saying, here's what we did, so you have to do this too. We just say, here's what worked for us. Maybe it'll work for you. And we drag guests along so that they share their experiences too. And so it's a learning experience for us. And I don't think we realized that. We were trying to teach others and we didn't realize just how much we would learn throughout the process. Especially since I'm pretty sure the main reason we started the podcast was to keep up with the times because blogs were kind of diminishing and audio was and podcasts were on the rise. And we were like, how can we make this work for us?
That's so weird. It's like we're trend setting. It's like we never would have followed a thing. I don't know why. I think we were probably still late to it because that's more like us. But
Oh, we were also just sick of Twitter. So
oh yeah, So sick of Twitter. But we didn't,
I don't
we
even
still
have
like
my
the
Twitter
idea of the
account anymore.
game. We still like the games and the questions, and it's like we didn't really want to have to lose that. So we were just clinging to the past. That's what we did.
Yeah, no, pretty much. I mean, hey, and look how well it worked out. Look how well it worked out. Um, But yeah, before we wrap up the episode, I will just say that one of the hardest lessons that we had to learn throughout doing this podcast is just to be yourself. And I don't mean to sound corny, but it's true because perfection is the killer of passion. And if we obsessed about being perfect, we never would have started, which we almost didn't. We only started because so many podcasts were coming out during the pandemic, so we just said screw it and uploaded the trailer. And B, we would have lost interest in the project years ago because there's no such thing as perfection. And if you're constantly trying to reach it and you never do, it gets really discouraging and you lose your confidence. And just being ourselves, our ranty, tangent following selves, has done more than us constantly trying to make the podcast perfect. And I would say that, like, in the beginning, we were trying to make it perfect. We do have scripts that we follow, but only to a certain extent. We do wing some of the episodes and we try not to make it sound like we're reading straight notes. But we also lose our train of thought a lot. So we have to do that. And the podcast isn't perfect. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have so many listeners, is because this is what it is. What you hear is what you get, pretty much. Um, because my cousin, she's not a writer, but she listens to us. She listens to many of our episodes because she just loves listening to us talk. She doesn't know what we're talking about, but she just enjoys our conversations and our banter and sometimes bickering. So basically, just be yourself and be comfortable with that. And even if people complain about your voice, even if you don't like your voice at the beginning, it's who you are. And that's a good thing because, you just got to love yourself and it just makes the whole thing go smoother. And, that sometimes that perfection, that need for perfection won't go away and the nerves will never really go away. But, just keep at it and just know you're doing a good job.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect way to end it. And honestly, I find that with the podcast, one of the things, because as you said, we are ourselves. Pretty obviously, we are ourselves. Um, it's kind of made it easier to show up every week, and it's made it easier to just get back to these, even with the nerves. We still do it. And I don't know about you, but I feel like I'll have a lot more confidence doing this podcast. I feel like I have a lot more confidence if I end up on another podcast, like if I ever guested on another podcast. I feel more comfortable talking to guests. Not 100%, I still get the nerves, but I do, and I feel like it's made me more confident overall because even though we're just talking to each other and we're just recording it here, every time we go on like Podbean, we're on something like, as a recording of this, 12,700 downloads for our little tiny podcast. It just blows my mind that there's been that many that many downloads, that there are, over 100 people listening on this platform, or 50 people on this if I think about it too much, then I kind of get panicky. But overall, I think it's made me more confident to try new things and push a bit more. And I think I'm more likely to now go, you know what, when my book comes out, I'm going to go and see if I can get on a podcast and be interviewed. Whereas before it was like, that's rarely going to happen. So I think it's good to be yourself and to find a comfort level with it, if that makes sense.
No, it does. That's a good point. I think I concur because I agree. I think I've gained more confidence with it as well. And it's so much better to be yourself when you have when you have a co-host that actually accepts who you are, despite us never meeting each other in person. But you and we just clicked. So I think we really lucked out with that as well.
Yeah, that should be an extra one. It's like you have to be good with your co-host. If you're having two people, I mean, we may have mentioned that in the last episode, which I think was something like episode 15. Like, it was really early. It was like a mega early episode, by the way. Yeah, something stupid. Um, yeah, I
Stupid.
you have to
I'm gonna
you
look this
have to
up
be
right now.
able. You go. I don't think she trusts me. I don't think she trusts my memory. It's not going to be 15, is
It's
it?
not that I don't trust you. It's just I am in shock that it was that long ago. My God. I thought it was like episode 100 or something. It was for one of our milestones.
No, I've got a weird feeling it was way earlier than like stupidly like, hey, guess what we learned after only doing it for 15 weeks. But anyway, what was I saying? I forgot what I was saying. Thank you, Rachel, for interrupting. This is what happens when you have a bad host.
Wait, I'm almost there.
We're holding our breath, waiting for
Wait,
you.
what am I looking up? Oh, yeah, wait. What have we learned from running a podcast? Episode 15,
Ha!
July 8th, 2020.
Ah, look how good my memory is. I
Good for
may be
you. I
old, but
applaud
my
you. I
memory
applaud
is
you. I'm applauding.
thank you, thank
There
you.
you go.
I have totally forgot what I was gonna say now. So,
Sorry.
what was I saying? Give me a minute. This is gonna be a lot of editing for you.
I know. I'm pretty sure this episode is going on like an hour, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I have absolutely zero idea what I was gonna say. I'm sure it was gonna be devastatingly witty, and everyone would be weeping with the intensity of it. But I've forgotten it, so we're just gonna go. I remembered that it was episode 15, but I forgot what I was saying 5 minutes ago. Rachel, you can take it away.
We do have a couple of other points to make, which is why we're going to record a separate bonus episode for coffee. So even if you're not a Merry Writer and you just follow the page for free, you'll still have access to this bonus episode. I don't know when it'll release. Hopefully, maybe we'll publish it like the day after this comes out, so you guys aren't bombarded with our voices. Does that sound fair? When's this going out? April 2nd? So April 3rd. The bonus episode will go live on Coffee on April 3rd. How about that? We'll leave it at that. So before we leave, please do go check out our Coffee page, and you can learn more about us and podcasts and opportunities to be a guest on the show. You can check out the merrywriterpodcast.podbean.com. And just one final shout out to everybody who listens, who shares the episodes, who's been a guest on the show, who supported us on Coffee. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate it. So with that said, we're going to turn it over to you guys. And please let us know in the comments, how long have you been listening to the show? Because I'm curious to see how many like newbie listeners we have versus how many people that have actually stuck around for this long. And if you have stuck around for a long time, tell us why, because I'm really curious. And I'll just say thank you again anyway. Despite being here for potentially a long time, please remember that we do release a new episode every Wednesday. Next week, we are going to have a special guest on the show, and we'll be interviewing author Amanda Blake. So to ensure you don't miss that, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on your way out wherever you're listening. And as always, thank you for listening to the Merry Writer Podcast. We will see you guys next week. This podcast is brought to you by Excessive Caffeine. We drink a lot. The music titled Inspired is by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons 4.0.